All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into something else. It's a satirical script for a fictional public health campaign that is provocative, absolutely hilarious, and, believe it or not, actually pretty smart. Let's get right into it.
So right out of the gate, the campaign doesn't pull any punches. This quote, supposedly from one of the hosts, just perfectly captures the outrageous tone. It's meant to shock you, make you laugh, maybe make you a little uncomfortable, but it gets you thinking, right? So what's the actual idea they're selling?
Well, here it is. The whole thing is this radical reframing of a really serious issue. It basically takes the sterile, kind of scary world of preventative healthcare and just smashes it together with intimacy and human connection. It's an experiment to see what happens when you try to fight a public health crisis with a whole lot of innuendo.
So the campaign boils down to this one kind of wild question. What if the time partners already spend being, intimate could actually be used for something more? Could that touch become purposeful? Could you actually train someone to detect the early signs of things like breast or testicular cancer? It's all about turning something people already do into a potential life-saving moment.
But just when you think it's all a joke, the source material hits you with this. A reminder that early cancer detection can boost survival rates by up to 90%. That's huge. So underneath all the gags and the ridiculousness, there's a really serious point. Finding cancer early saves lives, and figuring out new ways to get people to do it is a really tough nut to crack. All right, so the whole satirical campaign is split into two parts. The first one is aimed at men, and it has this incredibly subtle title, Hands-on Heroes, Men Against Cancer. So let's meet the so-called expert behind this mission.
And here he is, Chad Thundercock. He's the charismatic and completely unqualified face of the whole operation. His self-proclaimed titles? Level 1 Nipple Whisperer? It's just perfect satire. It pokes fun at all those self-important guru types while building out this completely absurd world.
You've gotta love this. The mix of fake professionalism and comedy is just brilliant. We find out Chad carries a laminated card calling himself an official gropologist, and the punchline that it's not government-issued, but it is water-resistant. That's the kind of detail that makes this whole fictional world feel so much more ridiculous and, honestly, kind of real.
And of course, it doesn't stop there. They've got a whole fake certification program. The titles of the modules, like What's a Lump and What's Just Tuesday, are hilarious, but they also use that humor to touch on very real anxieties people have. It's so clever because it perfectly mimics the structure of a real training course, which makes the parody of confusing clinical health advice that much better.
Now, you might be thinking this is all aimed at men, but nope. To keep things fair and fun, the source material immediately hits us with a parallel campaign for women. It's called Palm the Prostate, Women on the Front Lines, and it uses the exact same logic, just flipped.
And this quote from the other host, the much more witty Tanya Tingle, just nails it. She coins the term testicle tango to perfectly mirror the provocative language of the men's campaign. She's basically saying, hey, if this works for one, it's got to work for the other. This whole preventative pleasure thing is for everybody.
And you guessed it, the women's campaign has its own certification. The modules for becoming a certified testicular tactician are a direct echo of the men's. You've got that same formula, a slightly too real question, followed by a hilariously reframed idea. Honestly, When Ball Fondling Becomes a Public Service could be the title for this entire explainer.
So when you put them side by side, it's pretty clear what's going on. You have Hands-on Heroes training men and Palm the Prostate training women. They're perfect mirror images of each other, and that symmetry is totally on purpose. It makes it crystal clear that the satire isn't aimed at men or women. It's aimed at the idea of this communication strategy itself.
So, what's the one big idea that ties all of this delightful madness together? Well, the campaign actually gives it a name. There's this unifying philosophy that really captures the essence of this whole wild concept.
They call it preventative pleasure. That's the core concept right there. It's this belief that you can merge two things that seem like polar opposites, a health screening and sexual intimacy, and get a 2-for-1 deal. You save lives, and you deepen your connection. A bold idea, and let's be clear, a completely fictional one.
And like any good philosophy, it's got rules to live by. And I love this list because look at the mix. You have the deadly serious, consent first,
right next to the super practical, wash your hands first, and then the big lofty idea, public service meets personal pleasure. It just shows you how much thought went into building this satirical world.
Okay, at this point, you're probably thinking this is all just one big, ridiculous joke. And you're right, it is. But the source material is hinting that there's actually a deeper point to all of this absurdity. So why? Why go through the trouble of creating this elaborate, provocative satire?
Yeah, really. What's the real takeaway here? Why invent characters like Chad Thundercock and concepts like certified testicular tacticians? Is there an actual message hiding underneath all the madness?
Well, here's the answer. The whole thing is basically a thought experiment. It uses extreme, over-the-top humor to get us to think about how we talk about our health and our bodies. Or, more accurately, how we don't talk about them. It's really a critique of how traditional, boring public health messages just aren't cutting it anymore.
So think about the big things that stop people from getting checked early. There's the taboo, the awkwardness of talking about our bodies. There's the genuine fear of what you might find. And then there's just plain old apathy. This satire comes in like a wrecking ball, using jokes to try and smash through all three of those barriers and make the subject just a little more approachable.
And it all comes down to this one last line from the script, which is just perfect. If it feels funny, get it checked. And if it feels really funny, keep doing it, but also get it checked. It's provocative, it's funny, and it's an unforgettable way to blend pleasure with responsibility. And it really does leave you wondering, maybe a little bit of absurdity is actually the best way to get a serious message across.